Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. So hopefully everybody's having a good week as we're about to get over the hump here. Let me see. I just got to do something here real quick before we get started. All right. All right. So, anyways, we're gonna give people a chance to come in before we get started. Of course, a friendly reminder to everybody: if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That would be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer questions to the best of my ability. So, anyways. So today I was, of course, watching some more cartoons from this time from April of 1941, including one of the two non-Popeye two reelers from 1941, Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy, Fleischer Studios adaptation of the Johnny Gruel books. Um, let's see. We also, of course, saw some Popeye and some Gabby from Fleischer as well. Fleischer, of course, Gabby, as um, Sneak, Snoop, and Snitch were all kind of spun off from the Gulliver's Travels movie. Gabby got his own series entirely, and then, of course, Sneak, Snoop, and Snitch were featured in the animated Annex cartoons of the time. So now we're coming up on 3 minutes, so I guess I'll talk about what's on tap for tonight. So tonight we got a couple articles we're going to go over. One from Bounding in the Comics, one from Bleeding Fool. One talking about model zombies, where the showrunner acknowledges that I guess they went out of their way not to, do any homages or anything like that. And then Greg Rucka was talking about how he left DC partly because they were driving him crazy. So, plus, of course, we've got, got the wrestling wrap up, get caught up on all of the action from last night's NXT, look ahead to tonight's, tonight's Dynamite. As of course, you got TNA talent that was invading NXT. We'll talk a little bit about that as they're preparing for, for this Friday's Victory Road, and then of course we'll wrap things up with this day in history. So with that all being said, let's see what's all up here. All right. Well, why don't we go? We'll go ahead and get started here in a moment, of course. I'll do one more thing here. Alrighty, and that should things a bit there. So, with that being said, why don't we go ahead get started then? Go grab the first article here. All right, so here's the first article we're going to look at tonight. Friendly reminder, of course, everybody, if you guys can haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the question best of my ability. So, Marvel Zombies showrunner says Disney Plus series intentionally avoids references, homages to original comics. Article published September 23rd, yesterday, by Spencer McCooley. So let's go ahead and see what's going on here. So, far from surprising for Marvel Studios at this point, but disappointing nonetheless, Marvel Zombie showrunner Brian Andrews has confirmed that the upcoming Disney Plus series will feature zero references, homages, or even Easter eggs related to the original comic book source material, primarily as he intended for the series to, quote, be its own thing, unquote. Andrews, who previously directed a number of episodes across both seasons of What If, spoke to his approach to the Undead spinoff during a recent interview given alongside Marvel television head Brad Winderbaum to the Nerdist Eric Diaz. Asked by his host if there were, quote, any moments from the comic you definitely wanted to replicate, unquote, in the 4-episode miniseries, the showrunner admitted, quote, not so much in this iteration of it, unquote. Oh, look at that. Yikes. Quote, there were a few things that that we did as a nod to the comics back in the first season of What If. But once we had done that, then it's like, in small quote, oh, okay, all bets are off, on small quote. Quote, on this one, we just went for it. So if we get a chance to ever do another round of Marvel Zombies, then you never know what stuff we might homage and borrow from the comics a little bit, just to acknowledge them, but this one pretty much seems to be its own thing, which is still cool, unquote. As noted by Andrews, comic book throwbacks featured in the original What If Zombies episode include T'Challa's flesh being slowly harvested for sustenance by a zombified hero, Scarlet Witch in the animated series Hank Pym and Marvel Zombies Volume 1, Number 2. Wasp dying in giant form and being subsequently overrun by an undead horde, in parentheses, the fate that originally befell Galactus in Marvel Zombies Volume 1, Number 5. Scott Lang being reduced, no pun intended, to life as nothing more than a floating head in a jar. In parentheses here, his Futurama-esque new look, originally rocked by Hawkeye in Marvel Zombies 2, Volume Number 1. Parentheses there. Let's see. Doctor Strange, as well as Thanos, Lieutenants Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian, being consumed by a swarm of zombie wasp-directed bugs. In parentheses, a small taste of Sandman's killing blow against a zombified hero in Marvel Returns Volume 1, Number 5. And Spider-Man's last-minute web-swinging rescue of Bruce Banner, in parentheses, his help originally given to Ash Williams in Marvel Zombies vs. Army of Darkness, Volume 1, Number 1, in parentheses. See if anybody's saying anything yet. Nope. Let's see. Adding to the director's thoughts, Winderbaum further recalled, quote, yeah, I think we definitely had the tone of, in brackets, original concept creative duo, unbracketed, Robert Kirkman's writing and Sean Phelps' amazing art kind of set, unquote. Quote, it was on our minds a lot. Obviously, we love those books, but also we're playing off the MCU while the comics are playing off classic 616 universe. So the lore is different and it's a different set of rules. However, I will say that tonally, we really were trying to stay in that same vein, unquote. To this end, Andrews was later asked as to whether Marvel Studios had given him a mandate at all on how bloody this show could be, unquote. Showrunner explained, quote, like, I don't think it's over the top. That was just a choice for us, unquote. Quote, Kevin, brackets Feige, was pretty much saying, in smaller quotes here, you guys got this, just be rad, smaller quote. And so, to our taste level, it's like, quote, yeah, we wanted to be TVMA, and we don't want to pull any punches, unquote. But also, we don't want to be gratuitous in that way. Like an adolescent that is just nerding out on the wrong thing and forgetting the storytelling. So we went there to be so we want there to be a good balance, We want the shock value, but we also want the drama and the emotion as well, unquote. And there we are. Consisting of 4 total episodes, the entirety of Marvel Zombies is on track to rise from the grave this Wednesday, September 24th. So today. So I guess you just, need to go look it up on Disney Plus, I guess. But with that being said, of course, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna need to go off camera here for a moment here. But before I do that, let me go ahead and at least get the next story set up here. Looking at this one, the Greg Rucka story. Toxic work environment. And of course, we'll get to this when I get back here. But for the moment, I need to go off camera, so I'll be right back. Put the music on for you guys while I'm gone. All right, I'm back. So we'll get into this next article here. You'll see. And again, friendly reminder to everybody, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With that being said, let's go ahead and get to this next article here. All right, so toxic work environment. Writer Greg Rucka said working at DC Comics made him suicidal. Article by Avi Green, published today, September 24th. So let's see what's going on here. All right, so Avi, starting off here. Comic book movie has some transcribed dialogue from a word balloon podcast where we get another example of somebody telling us years later that all was not as rosy as previously assumed, and what could be considered a relationship between leftists. This is now getting into the so from the article here, whether it's the Punisher and Wolverine for Marvel Comics or Gotham Central and Wonder Woman for DC, writer Greg Rucka is renowned for his work in the world of superheroes. And I think I have seen his credit a few times in some of the animated series that he's done. And then Avi's response to what we just read there. No, he isn't. No matter what he's got to say about his relations with 2 or 3 specific writers and editors now, he still has blame to shoulder for bringing DCU and MCU down to the shoddy level they're at now, including but not limited to his writing connected to the Infinite Crisis crossover. He's even got some pretty woke writings in his portfolio that were unsurprisingly optioned for television and films. Now, here's what he told the podcast. So back to the interview here. Quote, that was me at my absolute lowest at DC. That was in the deep end when everybody was lying to me, using me, betraying me, abusing me, unquote, he shared. Quote, my relationship with James, brackets Robinson, was a bad one. He was writing whatever he wanted. We were not collaborating well. Collaborating with Sterling, brackets Gates, was great. Literally was the best thing about that period. But it was just a repeated kick between the legs. Oh, God. Okay. Oh, boy. Ouch. That hurt. That hurts. And unparenthesed there. Quote, or unquoted there. Um, Quote, it was toxic when I was there and remained toxic until Dan Didio left. It was an abusive, manipulative environment. Jeff Johns was an incredibly manipulative person to me, used me, lied to me, played me off against people. Didio did the same thing, unquote. Ruka continued, um, quote, I was made promises repeatedly and they were always broken, parentheses. Explaining the impact that had on him, he added, quote, when I left in 2009, I was mentally ill. I was severely depressed and suicidal. I nearly took my life. And that's all the direct result of the way I was treated from 2006 through 2009. It was done with malice. The people I'm speaking about are bad actors. I'm not in a place where I will ever defend them again. They did what they did with malice of forethought, unquote. And this is Avi's response to that. Yes, they were very bad actors themselves. The damage they did to the DC's coherency and morale is huge. Fortunately, even Ruka himself is a pretty bad actor, and one of the first wrongs he did when he came to work for them was retconning the Renee Montoya character into a lesbian in the Gotham Central series. It wouldn't be the last, as the Infinite Crisis crossover and Wonder Woman 219 Volume 2, where Diana breaks Max Lord's neck to stop him from mind controlling Superman, who only condemns her for the act and little else, was one of the worst moments in Ruka's pretentious story portfolio, and now we're supposed to care what he thinks. Let's also consider he made leftist political statements in the past decade, and his son was involved in criminal activity a few years ago. Yeah, Avi's not a big fan of dark storylines. We've covered that here, several times. Anytime anything goes dark, he's like rallying against it. So and then it's sad. Ruka also discusses anti-Semitism in the comics industry, but when he adds, and this back to the interview from Avi's statement, admitting that his 2016 and 2019 runs returns to DC to write Wonder Woman and Wonder Comics were similarly problematic, Ruka was asked what's changed. Quote, I'm going to be perfectly honest. It's a different company right now. The people there, it's healthy, unquote. He explained, revealing that the communication between editors had improved significantly, creating a more collaborative environment. And here's Avi's response to that. Really? Does that include employment of far left extremists despite the anti-Semitism they espoused? Only after what Gretchen Felker Martin wrote on social media about the tragically assassinated Charlie Kirk did the management take Martin off the payroll. Also, look at who else DC still employs. Who hired the quote dude in a dress unquote, as noted by Ethan Van Sciver. And then of course they show the oh yes, these are a couple of tweets right here from Ethan Van Sciver. Here's the creep who hired Gretchen. Surprise, it's another trans weirdo, son of Hollywood actor John Turturro. Unfortunately, Jesus from the Big Lebowski. now calls himself Ariana Totoro. He who would like to be called she now works as an editor at DC. So then Ethan Van Sciver responding to his own tweet, "We did it," from September 11th. Now let's look into the freak that hired this monster. I'm quoting this from Ethan's tweet, by the way. Someone is holding the door open for these people at DC Comics, probably using their identity to keep them free from scrutiny. So now going back to the article here, and I guess back to Avi's commentary here. With people like that in their employ, and uh, Marvel doubtless has their share of such ideologues too. Is it any wonder this could happen to start? This could happen to start with. I think after this revelation, I'll have to consider actor John Turturro an embarrassment as well. If Ruka doesn't make a call for these kind of people to be removed from employment in Comicton, I see no reason to take his discussions at face value. Avi expressing his points of view on this matter. And in conclusion here, Ruka's just one of quite a few overrated scribes of his time, much like Johns and Didio themselves, and a writer who takes such a woke approach to scripting cannot be expected to maintain a convincing complaint about anti-Semitism in the industry, let alone sexism. Let's also recall Ruka once had a cover illustration of Wonder Woman censored all because her rear end was in view, and this sure was odd considering he may have written a shower scene for Wonder Woman in his initial run on the series in 2005. Not to mention that if William Marston and H.G. Peter created Wonder Woman as a sex symbol, and all Ruka's doing is insulting their memory. Yeah. So, anyways, all right. So that's it for that article. Now let's see where we're at on. So 20. So we're coming up on 30 minutes here. So I think. Let me see if I'm gonna go ahead and just unshare this for a moment. Let me see if there's anything that maybe I can find a little quickie to go through here. I can find a quickie, kind of a quickie article to go through here. Let's see now. I'm just right now just trying to see if there's anything. Um, all right, let's see now. Let me. Mm-hmm. Well, they haven't put up anything a few days either. Okay. All right. So there's not a whole lot new. Of course, we all know, um, sometimes you get like big swaths of news, and then you get, then you get kind of slowdown. I do need to actually step away from the computer for a moment. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go use the restroom here. Since I hang this one up. I'm gonna put some music on while I'm gone. All right, I'm back. So, anyways, as I said, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the wrestling wrap up now. Is why is it not? There we go. Okay. So, anyways, so let's first off take a look back at last night's NXT coming from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. Um, as you had Booker T and Vic Joseph on commentary, with of course Mike Santana joining them for the main event. The show opened up with a lights out match in which Miles Bourne defeated Lexus King. Lights out match traditionally is basically an unsanctioned match where anything goes. The referee is just simply there to count the pinfall. That's it. In the finals to determine the next contender to the WWE Women's Speak title, which will be happening at this Saturday's No Mercy pay-per-view. Laney Reed defeated Candice LeRae. She'll now be set to take on Sol Ruca, who's also the NXT Women's North American Champion. In a battle of the Graces, Jordynne Grace defeated Ariana Grace in just under 3 minutes, which led to another big brouhaha between Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe, as Blake Monroe came out with a pink kendo stick, while Jordan went and grabbed a chair, and they were beating until Robert Stone and Stevie Tyler came out to announce that the two would be involved in a weapon steel cage match in which you can bring any weapons you want. You'd be locked inside of a steel cage. You just go for it. Then, of course, then you had in a 6-man tag match. You had Dark State members Osiris Griffin, Dion Lennox, and Saquon Sugars taking on Chase Hughes, Cale Dixon, Uriah Connors, and Joe Hendry. Andre Chase in their corner. Defeating. And then in the main event, in a what was they were trying to do a unification match, as it were, in a title versus title match. Oba Femi, the NXT champion, was taking on Trick Williams, the TNA world champion. It ended up in a no contest when Trick Williams attacked Mike Santana, who was on commentary. This, of course, brought out a number of the TNA talent. TNA talent was there at the event too, as of course TNA would be having its Victory Road pay-per-view this Friday, and NXT would be having its No Mercy pay-per-view this Saturday. Now, with all that being said, of course, Masha Samovich, who I believe was also there at TNA, TNA recently announced that they were starting an internal investigation, as it's come out in the last few days that Masha Slamovich is being accused of domestic violence by her former partner, Akira, an independent wrestler. So we'll have to stay tuned for that. So, but looking ahead for a moment as well to this Saturday's No Mercy pay-per-view, let's see what's all on tap for that. As we already did kind of allude to a couple of matches, the speed title will be on the line. Sol Ruca defends against Lainey Reed, and Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe will be taking. But let's see what's all going down this Saturday on at No Mercy. So WWE NXT No Mercy, coming from the Fort Lauderdale War Memorial in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, be airing on Peacock. As we said, a weaponized steel cage match has been signed between Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe. Basically a battle of two former world champions, as of course Jordynne Grace, a multiple time, I believe she's like a 3-time TNA Knockouts World Champion, taking on former AEW World Champion Blake Monroe. Josh Briggs is set to take on Javon Evans in a singles match. As we just mentioned a few minutes ago, Sol Ruca with Zarya in her corner will be defending the WWE Women's Speed title against Lainey Reed. In a match for the NXT Women's title, JC Jane with both members of Fatal Influence of Fallon Henley and Jasmine Nix in her corner will be taking on Lola Vice. Ethan Page is set to defend the North American title against Tavion Heights, and Oba Femi will be defending the NXT title against Ricky Saints. As the show was coming to an end last night, there was a situation in which two of them were kind of glaring at the NXT title. Now, with all that being said, let's look ahead to tonight's. Let's of course look ahead to tonight's Dynamite, coming off of All Out, as it were. On tonight's Dynamite, coming from the Peterson Event Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on TBS. In a match for the AEW World Tag Team titles, Brodito, Ring of Honor World Champion Bandito, and Brody King defend the titles against the Gates of Agony, Bishop Khan and Toa Leona, with Ricochet in their corner, representing the Demand. Adam Page defends the AEW World title against Ring of Honor Pure Champion Lee Moriarty. Claudio Castagnoli of the Death Riders is set to take on the Ops Powerhouse Hobbs in a 6-man tag match. Don Callis family members Hechicero, AEW Unified Champion Kazuchika Okada, and G1 Climax Champion Konosuke Takeshita, with Don Callis in their corner, will be taking on members of the Conglomeration, Mark Briscoe, Hologram, and a mystery opponent. And then in her first title defense since winning the title this past Saturday's All Out, Chris Statlander will be defending the AEW Women's World title against Mina Shirakawa. So that's all we got for you in terms of the wrestling wrap up. So with that being said, with today being Wednesday, September the 24th, 2025, let's go ahead and take a look back at this date in Neat's history. Let me just. 1995, and 1985. So, all right. So first off, we're going to head back 40 years ago. On this date, 40 years ago today, back in 1985. The Urusei Yatsura special, Ryoko's September Tea Party, came out on it. It was a special combining flashback footage, 50 minutes of new animation. This was originally released in fan conventions and was labeled in the United States as part of the OAV series. So on this date, Studio Dean released the second special in the Urusei Yatsura special, the 25th and a half episode, Ryoko September Tea Party. So, so that happened 40 years ago today. Now getting ready to move on to the next piece of Neat's history. As we know, of course, when we move ahead to the year 1995, as on this date in the year 1990, on this date in the year 1995, oh wait, what was that? Oh, okay. From the Saginaw Civic Center in Saginaw, Michigan, WWE held its third, or WEF rather at the time, World Wrestling Federation, held its third In Your House event, triple header. This was when they were still. It was still when they just had 4 main pay-per-views a year. We're experimenting with the idea of monthly pay-per-views. This was the start of it for them. The event, of course, in the main event, saw Diesel and Shawn Michaels defeat in basically what I believe was basically a winner take all type of match. You had Diesel and Diesel was at the time the WWF World Heavyweight Champion. Shawn Michaels was the Intercontinental Champion, challenging the British Bulldog and Yokozuna, who were the Tag Team Champions, in which Diesel and Shawn Michaels defeated British Bulldog and Yokozuna to become the new Tag Team Champion, along with retaining the Intercontinental and WWF Championships. Let's see. Bret Hart defeated John Paul Lafitte. Shane Douglas with Bob Backlund, or Dean Douglas with Bob Backlund in his corner, defeated Razor Ramon. The British Bulldog, having wrestled earlier in the night, defeated Bam Bam Bigelow. And on the free for all, Fatu, basically everybody knows him today as Rikishi, defeated Hunter Helmsley, or Triple H. So on this date, back in 1995, of course, WWE held its third In Your House event from the Saginaw Civic Center in Saginaw, Michigan. And 1995 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. It's also on this date 30 years ago, on Sunday, September 24th, 1995, 30 years ago today. In syndication, in first run syndication, Sunbow Entertainment's G.I. Joe Extreme premiered in syndication on this date back in 1995. G.I. Joe Extreme. Okay, so yeah, we don't want to talk about we want to talk more about the show, not the. All right, so G.I. Joe Extreme is an American animated series that was produced by Sunbow Entertainment, who co-owned the first G.I. Joe, or co-produced the first G.I. Joe TV series, Grass Entertainment and Gunther Wall Productions, and distributed by Cluster Television. The program was part of a checkerboard series of cartoons Cluster sold to stations under the umbrella title The Power Block. So, anyways, so that happened 30 years ago today, as well as G.I. Joe Extreme would premiere on this date 30 years ago in first run syndication. And finally on this date in the year 2014, 11 years ago today, on this date 11 years ago today, let's see, the 15th issue of Batman 66 went on sale in comic shops on this date back in 2014. That was 11 years ago. Sold for $2.99. It was 28 pages. The two stories included Caught in the Widow's Web, as written by Jeff Parker, with art by Wilfredo Torres. Wes Abbott did the lettering, and Tony Avina did the coloring. And that story was followed by Batman Fights Penguin's Dread, as written by Jeff Parker. The same creative team there. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we'll be back here with more Niche News tomorrow. And don't forget, this Sunday I'll be joined by Rick Piper from Cross Comic. We'll be continuing our trip down Comic History Lane to June 1940. We'll be looking at comics that went on sale from Quality Comics. We'll be reading, of course, some Doll Man, some Black Condor, some Clock, maybe some Espionage with Black X, as well as Invisible Hood, and we'll be introducing everybody to Magno. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, Um, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.